Hi students, and welcome to the very final session for workforce planning. This is our assessment support workshop. So in this session I'll be taking you through the three assessment tasks that you'll need to complete this subject, workforce planning. This is the fourth installment of our webinar series. So by the end of this session you'll have all of the information that you need to successfully complete those three assessment tasks that you see in front of you now. So assessment task 1, number 2, and number 3, in conjunction with the previous 3 webinars that are in the block already, which are the resource support workshop. So that is your information broken down. So we talk about all of the topics that we've been talking about in those sessions. So access the resource support workshops to catch all of the information, all the topics broken down for you. And by the end of the session, in conjunction with those workshops, you'll be able to supply your completed assessment tasks for this subject, which is fantastic. So this is a quick session because I'll just be, won't be going through the actual material with you in this session, just be talking you through how to actually submit your assignments and your assessments for this one. So let's jump into the very, very first one, which is the assessment task 1. So let's open that one up. And I'll actually just read through what we have on our screen. So the very first assessment task for managing workforce planning. The idea for this one is to actually develop a workforce plan. So this is going to put all of the information that we went through, particularly in that first resource support workshop. We were talking about workforce capability and diversity strategies. We were talking about the workforce planning cycle and how it links to strategic direction of the business, how to profile your workforce, and so on and so forth. So this is actually going to put all of that information that we've talked through, all of the information that you've completed through your learning activities together, and we've actually made it easy for you. We've got a nice template for you to actually work through, which will be all you'll need to do to submit to complete this particular assessment. So it's actually split into 2 parts. I'll actually read through the sections here, but then we'll actually just go through the actual template itself. So the requirement for you is to complete a workforce plan, which is part 1, looking at a supply analysis, determining and documenting your current workplace profile, which includes these dot points below. A bit of a demand analysis as well, so having a look and seeing what exists outside of the business. So looking at economic factors or technological factors, having a look at the labour market, having a look at some of the different job prospects for some of the roles that you'll need to fill as part of your strategic plan. And the last part is just a 500-word summary on a couple of points. So what we'll do, because this can be a bit confusing reading through this particular assessment in terms of what is it actually that I need to do here, let's actually go back to the subject screen. So this is the actual workforce planning subject screen. And let's open up the very first assessment task template. So you'll see there's a Word document right underneath that one where I've actually highlighted right here. And if you click on that, depending on the browser, it might automatically download. It might open a box asking if you wish to download that item or open that item. So please do open that item there. Now I'm just going to move this over so that everybody can see this as we talk. So here we go. You should be able to see that now. Let's make that full screen, shall we? Okay. Okay, so we're now looking at the template for assessment task 1, workforce planning. This is just your front page. Pop your name and your ID in there on that first page. We don't really need the ID because we know who you are when you're submitting your work, but this is actually just good practice because this is exactly what you'll need to supply if you move on to higher education, if you move on to some other form of study after this as well. So it's just good practice to get into that habit of putting those details. So let's have a look at what it is you need to do for this particular assessment task. So the first part, this is designing a workforce plan for an organisation that you have researched. So let's start with that. If you are employed at the moment, I suggest that you use an organisation that you're very familiar with or that you have access to. And when we say access, I mean that you can speak to somebody, you can interview somebody, you can ask questions of somebody to help you with profiling it and understanding with the direction of the business. So suggest if you are employed and you're comfortable in that employment, you understand that environment pretty well, you're comfortable enough to ask questions about the workforce profile. So, the numbers of employees, the genders, positions, things that you're actually seeing on the box in front of you on the screen, as well as determining what the strategic direction, so what the business are trying to achieve in a 3-year or 4 or 5-year sort of window, whether it be to open up a new store, whether it be to sell a new type of product. What is the direction of the business? So these are the sort of things that you'll need to research and find out. So ultimately, that would be the place that you work at, as you know that place well. It can be another organization. Now, I actually had this exact same task to do many, many years ago, I think 6 or 8 years ago now, however long ago it was that I had to do the exact same assessment as you guys are doing right now. And I went out and found a not-for-profit organisation by the name of Fair Trade. Fair Trade are a company who issue out licenses to businesses such as companies that make coffee or food product, to just ensure that the distribution chain and the channel has been audited, and that everybody that exists in that chain is receiving a fair wage and clean and um, working conditions, things like that. So I actually approached that company and I asked if I was able to ask a series of questions to assist with putting putting a workforce plan together. They were more than willing to assist and help and so on and so forth. And what we even did at the end of it, we actually put a recommendation back to the company to say, look, this is what we think your workforce should look like moving forward, and maybe some ways that you can go about doing that. So they were very thankful for that too. So again, when you're doing this, pick a company that you're either very well familiar with, have access to the information in terms of what the workforce profile looks like now and what the strategic direction of the business might be, or pick one that you can actually, well, yeah, access that information. So maybe a friend's business or somebody that you can call on and ask a few questions. So I'll leave that to you. If you're having any difficulties with that, just let me know. And so this is exactly what you'll need to do from this point. So your first step, and if we go back and have a look at we've got a little diagram here that we used in our first workshop talking about the actual workforce planning cycle. So the very, very first step in a workforce plan is actually profiling and doing analysis on your own workforce. And again, when we're talking about workforce, we're talking about the people that are involved at work. That's what we mean by a workforce. So to profile your workforce, all you need to do in this step is actually just fill in the boxes that are provided for you. So here we've got employee, name, male, female, gender, position, their title, job role, age, FTE. So that's their employment status. Are they full-time? Are they part-time? So FTE actually is full-time equivalent. So 1 being full-time, 0.5 would be half of a full-time role. If I only did 1 day a week, that would be a 0.2. 2 days a week would be a 0.4, for example, based on a average working week of 5 days. Now the status, so that's where you would say full-time, part-time, and so forth. The tenure, so are they contracted? Are they there for only a temporary period of time? That sort of a thing. Salary, you can estimate these ones as well. It's just an estimate who that person reports to, and this is where the information starts to get good as well. So this just continues on from here. Qualifications, we're interested in the skill set of our workforce. This is part of a big part of actually profiling your workforce, is understanding the as we mentioned in the first workshop, the capability and capacity. The capability meaning the skills and knowledge that exist. The capacity is the total amount of those skills and knowledge. So here we see what qualifications our employees have. So insert those details into that box there. The training package reference, so if it's a qualification, where does that qualification come from? If you're wanting more information, go to training.gov to find that out. Skills and competencies, so here we want to know what are the generic skills, or what's the skills, what's the knowledge, what's the experience that that particular employee might have. So list those skills. And level, if there might be a particular level that is differentiated. So depending on the business, depending on the actual skill itself, there might be different levels of that skill. We need to know what those different levels are when we're profiling our organization. So this is a current state. Step 1, profiling. This is about where they are right now. Okay. Step 2 is all about the strategic direction. So what I want you guys to do in this spot here is discuss what the strategic direction for the business is in the future. So where is the business going? So as I mentioned earlier, is there new products? Are there new services coming through? What is the, I guess, the overarching direction of the business? Where are they headed? And for that, probably look to a period of time between, look anywhere between 18 months and 5 years might be the goal there. So discuss that period of time and what that actual strategic direction is, because as we've already discussed or discovered, workforce planning is really about matching our workforce to meet the needs of the business in the future. So to do so, we'd actually need to know where the business is actually heading. So that's step two. You just need to discuss there where the business is actually heading. Now, what I'd like you to do for step three is do a future profile. This doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. There can be a little bit of an estimation and guesstimation in terms of the numbers and so on and so forth. But here, we want you to estimate what the future workforce profile will be. Are there skills that we have that we haven't utilized, or are there skills that we need to bring in from outside of the business? Are there new jobs that we have to put into the business? So what are the new roles? What are the new skills required in the business to achieve the step two that you've just told us about? So remember, step one is a profile of the current workforce. So this is what the business looks like right now. Step two, this is where we're heading. Step three, this is the way we should look if we're going to achieve that step two. Okay, so that's just the future profile there. So include the job roles and the skills that are going to be required for the business. Step four is in my opinion, one of the fun parts of this. This is what we call looking at the supply demand and essentially doing a bit of a analysis on the prospects of some of the roles and skills that we need to fill moving forward. So now that you've identified your future workforce profile, I want you to go to this particular website, which is called joboutlook.gov.au, and I want you to comment on the future prospects of that workforce profile. So if you've identified that you'll need 2 more statisticians for your business, you'll need 3 more nurses, 5 more chefs, whatever that might be. I actually want you to go and identify or look for that particular occupation through joboutlook.gov.au. We went through this actually on one of the resource support sessions, and I want you to comment on the future prospects of that particular role. So what are the future job openings of that role? Is it going to be something which is easily filled or not? And that's what we're really wanting to work out here. Is this going to be a hard thing to fill? Is it not going to be? We need to start working out a strategy on how we're going to achieve that. We might find that we will need to do a little bit of internal training or upskilling, or have some internal mechanisms to meet the needs of those skills. Depending on the actual skill or depending on the actual situation, might call for a different strategy. So before we come up with that particular strategy, I want you to go and have a look at what the job prospects are through joboutlook.gov.au. Now, if you'd like, you can also visit abs.gov.au. It's the Australian Bureau of Statistics. You can, and as seen in previous workshops, we showed you how to jump on there and have a look at some of the key statistical data that might be affecting labour trends or might be affecting employment rates or social spending. Actually, there's a lot of information on ABS in regards to household spends and things like that. So if your business is around the way that people, I guess, households might spend their disposable income, having a look at some of those statistics might impact some of the factors of your strategic direction. So they'll be very relevant in this mix. But for the most part here, just want you to take the actual job, some of the jobs that you've identified in the previous step, and tell us what the future prospects of those jobs are from a hiring point of view. Okay. Step 5, this is part of doing our internal and external analysis, I guess you could say. So firstly, I want you to conduct a SWOT analysis. Now, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Remember, the strengths and weaknesses are your internal functions. So a strength or a weakness will be about you or the business. Opportunities and threats are looking outside. So an opportunity might be market developments or an industry trend or technology developments. A threat might be a political situation or environmental effect. Competitors, they are some of our threats externally. So I want you to do a SWOT analysis, but I also want you to take it one step further and do a PEST analysis. Now, a PEST analysis actually stands for political, economical, social, and technological. So by that, And just all you need to do here is just fill in the boxes that are actually provided for you on this template there. Makes it nice and easy in completing this particular assignment. So when we're talking about political, we might be looking at things like future legislation or any regulatory bodies and processes that might, that might have something to do with what we're trying to achieve as part of our strategic direction. The economical factors might be relating to things like home economy, economy trends, overseas economies. Could be relating to general taxation, specific to a particular product or a particular service. So are there any economical factors that might affect what it is that you guys are trying to achieve, whether it's a new product service moving forward? Now, some of the social things relate to particular attitudes that consumers might have to your product or your service, maybe some of the media views. It could be some of the lifestyle trends that are changing. So what's happening out there? What are some of the trends that are social trends that are happening that might affect what your business is trying to achieve? And then have a look at the technological aspects. So what's happening in the world of computing? What's happening in the world of research and funding with regards to technologies? How could that potentially impact on what it is you guys are trying to achieve? So that's the first part, and that's all done. That is your workforce plan done. Once you've done that, we would like you to provide a 500-word summary, which is covered over 3 questions on how you're going to develop this, which includes things like recruitment strategies, accessing a skilled workforce, and diversity strategies. Remember, we talked very heavily about diversity in one of the sessions, the importance of having a diverse workforce as part of your future workforce plan. So for the first one, recruitment strategies, what I'd like you to put in there is some of the ways that you're planning on recruiting for your workforce. So what we mean by that is, what are some of the techniques and strategies you might do in a recruitment sense in order to achieve this goal that you've got? So go back and have a look at some of the materials for some different strategies. We talked about a few as well in some of the in one of the workshops. Okay, accessing a skilled workforce. So this is an extension of that first point. What we want to know here is both internally and externally. So how are you going to access the people that you need, both internally and externally? I.e., will you be training and upskilling certain staff to fill certain roles? And how are you going to fill the other roles? For example, are you bringing them in externally? Okay, so just talk about that balance between which ones you're going to be bringing in externally and which ones you're going to be upskilling that are internal. Also, I'd like to see any retention strategies there too. We talked a little bit about retention and how that relates to workforce planning. So put any retention strategies there too, i.e., how are we planning on retaining the information that we already have in our business so that we don't lose that information, that knowledge, those skills moving forward to achieving our workforce profile. And diversity strategies, which you can link to the first one. So recruitment strategies and diversity strategies. So what we want to know with diversity strategies is how can we build and maintain a diverse workforce? So when we're talking about how to build a diverse workforce, it might be part of what you're including in your recruitment strategies, because part of what you do, or one of the strategies you might have with your recruitment, might be to attract a diverse workforce. The other part of that is how to maintain. So what are some sort of things you might be doing in your organization to, I guess, to encourage diversity within the workforce and so on and so forth? So what sort of things might you do there? They're the 3 questions you've got to answer as part of part 2. And that is all you'll need to do to complete the first assessment task in workforce planning, which is developing your own workforce plan. That is the big one, I guess, for this set. The next 2 are actually not as difficult. Let's have a look at the second one. I'll open that now for you. And this second assessment task actually rolls off from that first one. So the first one, you've got the template there, you're building your own workforce plan. The second one, we need you to develop a communication strategy for that workforce plan. So this relates directly to what you've just completed in that first assessment task. And again, we've got a template for you. So I'm just going to open up that template. And I think that's the best way to go through this together. So let's open that up. Okie dokie. And there it is, the assessment task number 2, workforce planning template. So this is, as I mentioned, this is a nice continuation from what you've just done. So this is a communication strategy for the workforce plan that you've just designed. You just need to cover each of these points. So we've got a series of dot points for you: objectives, audiences, messages, tools and activities, resources, time, and evaluation and amendment. And then we'll move on to part 2. So let's go through each of these. So objectives, what are the objectives of having a strategy for communicating your new workforce plan? So we need to communicate this idea back to the business. What are the objectives for having a strategy for communicating your new workforce plan? That's the first one. The second one is, who's the audience for your communication? So we need to communicate all of the benefits to the business about this workforce plan and its objectives, what we're trying to achieve. So that's what we mean by objectives, what we're trying to achieve. So who's the audience for this communication? Who are the people with whom you need to communicate to achieve your organizational workforce planning objectives? That's all you'll need to answer for that one there. Now the messages under this one, what are the key messages that you wish to communicate to your audience in relation to the benefits of workforce planning? So here I just want you to list what the key benefits are to this workforce plan that you've just created in assessment task 1. And these are the messages that you will be attempting to communicate as part of your communication strategy. So what are those key messages? What are the reasons why we're doing this? What is the real benefit to the business? Why should the business get involved and take on this workforce plan that you've created? So what are those key messages? Tools and activities. Okay, so now we know what the key messages are. We know who we're communicating to with our audience. We know what the objectives are of what we're trying to say. What are the tools or the activities that you'll use to communicate your messages? So how are you going to do that? What are the actual communication mediums? What are the ways that you're going to be having those conversations? What are the ways that you're going to be able to get your message across about the benefits of your workforce plan that you've just created? So that's what we want you to put there under tools and activities. Next one, resources. What are some of the resources required to deliver this workforce plan? So have a look at what you've created. What are some things that you might need? Non-human related, so non-human related resources for that one. Timescale. So what are the timeframes involved in your workforce plan project? Just some I guess, just a couple of key time frames there would be great. So maybe when you're going to be planning on implementing this particular plan, and when you're going to be bringing new people in, and when that training might happen, so on and so forth. So just a couple of key times there. And the last part is, how will you evaluate the success of your communication regarding the benefits, activities, and strategy in your workforce plan? So the question here is, how will you know if you've communicated these things well? So you've designed a plan. This is all about a communication strategy. So this is all about communicating back to the organisation the benefits and the reason why the organisation should engage in this particular workforce plan. The last question here that we have for you is that, how will you know if you've actually communicated this really well? What are your indicators, and how are you going to know that your communication has been where it needs to be? Part 2, just a couple of, actually we've got 3 questions here, really nice straightforward questions. How will you communicate roles and responsibilities? So you'll have a few different tasks in relation to your workforce plan, a few different jobs, a few different roles and responsibilities. How are you going to communicate those? Question 2, processes to ensure that issues and concerns are recognised and addressed. So if you have any concerns that are recognised, how are you going to address those? And how communication from your direct manager and other key stakeholders is given to the team. Okay, so for this last question, you are responsible for the rollout of your new plan, your workforce plan. So how is communication from your direct manager or other people that are involved that you will be communicating, how's that going to come back to you and your team? Okie dokie, and that is all you'll need to do for the assessment task 2, which is your communication strategy for your workforce plan that you've created as part of assessment task 1. Okay, one last assessment task to take you guys through, which is assessment task number 3 for this subject, manage workforce planning. Let's have a look at that one. So assessment task number 3, this one is actually an interesting one. It actually looks at a little bit of team dynamic here. So we're starting to actually move already into our next subject, which is all about ensuring team effectiveness, teamwork, understanding teams. We're going to get right into all of the elements of teams very shortly in our next subject actually. But for this one, this is actually a bit of a taste into some of the, I guess, things that can happen in the team. We talked in the third resource workshop about 5 dysfunctions of a team. You might remember talking through, we were talking through that one. This is actually a practical example for you to actually pick up on that information. I want you to actually open up the attached questionnaire, which is underneath that link. If you click on that, let's open that up together. And here is your assessment task. There we go. So assessment task number 3, we need you to actually survey your team or a team that you're working with or team that you're familiar with and score them on the 5 dysfunctions of a team that we talked about last week or in the third resource support workshop. So again, for more information on the 5 dysfunctions of a team, please have a look at your learning materials and look at dysfunctions of a team, as well as listening into the third resource support workshop for that one. So we want you to talk about each of these 5 dysfunctions, which is the absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. And all you need to simply do is do a process of scoring. So using the scale below, indicate how each statement applies to your team. So briefly evaluate these statements. Don't overthink about them and just put a number in against each of them. So 3 means usually, 2 refers to sometimes, and 1 being rarely. So the first one, the statement here is team members are passionate and unguarded in the discussion of issues. If you would say that is usually the case, then put a 3 there. If you would say that is sometimes the case, then you'll put a 2 in this box. And if you think it's rare, that team members are passionate and unguarded, then you'll put a 1 in that box there. At the end of that, you'll do a bit of a scoring system. So you'll actually, statement number 1 actually appears as one of the second dysfunctions of the team. You'll put a number 1 in there. And at the end of it, you'll put the total. So statement 1 plus the number from statement 7 plus the number from statement 10 will equal a number. A score of 8 to 9 is a probable indicator that the dysfunction is not a problem. A score of 6 or 7 indicates that dysfunction could be a particular problem for that team, and a score of 3 to 5 is probably an indicator that team dysfunction needs to be addressed. So the completing of this survey is actually quite easy. What we actually want you to do once you've done that is analyze your results and provide a 1,000-word summary on the strategies that you might engage or use to support your team in those areas that you've identified. So you're doing a bit of an analysis on your team against these 5 dysfunctions, and then a 1,000-word report just with some strategies, some things that you could do to alleviate some of those issues that you've identified. And just to recap, the dysfunction number 1, absence of trust. So this absence of trust actually occurs when team members are reluctant to be vulnerable with one another, and they're also unwilling to admit to their mistakes, weaknesses, or need for help. So you've got a very high score, actually a very low score for this one. That means you've got a lot of absence of trust in your team. If that's the case, what can you do about it? You will have to look at the learning materials, and for this one, you also may have to do a bit of additional research. So Patrick Leoncioni in 2002 wrote a book about this, talking about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. There is some information out there. Please have a look and look for some strategies on how to alleviate some of these issues. So dysfunction number 2, fear of conflict. So teams that are lacking in trust are also incapable of engaging in unfiltered and passionate debate about key issues, causes situations where team conflict can easily turn into failed discussions and back channel comments and things like that. So if you've identified that, as one of the issues on your team, let's talk about some of the strategies that you could put in to alleviate that. Dysfunction number 3, lack of commitment. So without conflict, it's actually difficult for team members to commit to decisions, creating an environment where ambiguity prevails. So is that an issue that you've got on your team? Dysfunction number 4, avoidance of accountability. When teams do not commit to a clear plan of action, even the most focused and driven individuals hesitate to call their peers on actions and behaviours that may seem counterproductive to the overall good of the team. So we call that actually avoidance of accountability. So, and again, go back to the third workshop for a bit more information on these and the learning materials, of course. And then there's the 5th dysfunction, which is inattention to results. So team members naturally tend to put their own needs, so their own ego or their own career development or their own recognition ahead of the collective goals of the team when individuals aren't held accountable. Um, if a team has lost sight of the need for achievement, the business ultimately suffers. So if you scored your team as quite high or actually quite low, but if inattention to results is a big issue for your team, what are some of the strategies or what are some ways that you might actually help to develop and support your team in that area? Okay, guys, that basically wraps up the very last session here, which is our assessment support workshop for this subject. Thanks for tuning in. So thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You now have all the information to complete this unit, workforce planning, third subject in the Diploma of Management. Thanks very much for tuning in, guys. I wish you all the very best of luck and success with your attempts on this particular subject. Any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. All the best. See you next time.